Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 766B, and today's date is September 15th, 2015, and the title of this episode is Russia and Syria Tell U.S. Stop Supporting the Terrorists. Now, before I get started, I just want to make an announcement. Tomorrow, Wednesday, I'll be uploading an interview with Craig Hemke, also known as Turd Ferguson. He's from TF Metals Report. If you're on the X22Report.com email alert system, you'll get an email. If you subscribe to X22 Report Spotlight on YouTube, YouTube should send you an email. If not, you can go right over YouTube, type in X22 Report Spotlight. Should bring you right to that video. If not, you can come over to the X22Report.com site. If you look over to the right-hand side, scroll down a little bit, you'll see the interview on the right. Let's get right into the economic collapse geopolitical news. Now, in the last year or so, we've been seeing a lot of riots, a lot of what they call race wars, which that's not really what it is. We see war on the police, and this is all being ginned up. And you have to think to yourself, why is all of this happening at this point? Why is it happening now? Well, when you look at the big picture and you see what's happening, and you see that this economy is collapsing, falling apart, you realize that the U.S. government central bankers somehow, some way need to control the people. Remember, they're in power. They never want to give up their power. And what they like to do is control everything. And we see we're no longer a capitalist society. We're no longer a free democracy. We're no longer a country that looks at the Constitution or the rights of the people, except for the people that are still looking at it. The government, they don't care about it. And what they want to do is they want to have control over everything. They want to have control over your education. They don't want to leave it up to the states. They don't want to leave it up to the counties or towns. They want to dictate what people are learning. They also want to control the local police departments. Instead of creating a military force like DHS, which is part of it, but they don't have the manpower in there. If they can bring in the local police into this, this makes it much easier for them to control the situation because they have to take orders from the federal government. And what we're seeing right now is the same tactics they used for pushing their education program, where they give grants to states, cities, towns, as long as you accept our program. And we're seeing this with the police forces. On December 18th, 2014, Obama signed an executive order creating the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing. In May 2015, the task force came out with its final report, which is commonly given the title 21st Century Policing. One of the report's recommendations, which the Obama-friendly media fixated on, concerns greater restrictions on transfers of military equipment to local police agencies, and we heard all about this. But when you really look at this, and we discussed this before in other reports, it's not about restricting the transfer of military equipment, but simply place more federal controls over the local police. So they're not restricting anything at this point. They're not reducing the flow of war materials to law enforcement. All they're doing is putting more federal control over the police departments. Moreover, the new Obama rules regarding military gear were just one component of a broader set of recommendations issued by the Obama's Plan 21st Century Policing. And we can see that they want to control all of the local police forces across the country. And how is he doing this? Well, he's using grants. These grants are created by the administration to promote and fund the implementation of his policies associated with community policing strategies. Now remember, every time they come out with programs, bills, it's always given a fantastic name, but it always means the opposite. Patriot Act. It's not for the patriots. Actually, the Patriot Act allows the government to spy on the people. The U.S. Freedom Act allows corporations to spy on the American people. The Affordable Care Act, not affordable whatsoever. The community policing strategies. Do you really think this is going to be good for the people? No, it isn't. Those federal grants, of course, along with others, are the heart of Obama's efforts to nationalize everything from healthcare, education, and now law enforcement. So they say, if you want these grants and you want our new community policing strategies, you take the grant and you have to agree upon this. And you will report to the federal government. This is what they're doing right now. Basically, it's like Common Core for police. This is how they're pushing it. And they want this to come in line with the United Nations policing international standards. That's what they want. So you can see where this is going. And what's very interesting about all of this is that Obama said this is a great opportunity to really transform how we think about community law enforcement relations. We need to seize that opportunity. I mean, they make it sound like it's for you. But what he's saying is they're going to transform everything. Just like when they tell you there's going to be a new world order. It sounds great when you first hear it. Then you realize what they're really talking about. They're going to transform the way the police are today, where they live in your town, they're part of your community. They know people, their kids go to your school. They don't want that. They're going to transform how they act, how they respond. And he says we need to seize that opportunity right now. And they already have 6 U.S. cities targeted as pilot sites. I mean, the first 6 cities are going to be Birmingham, Alabama, Fort Worth, Texas, Gary, Indiana, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Stockton, California. So they're getting prepared and ready. And they're going to use this right now to see how it works. Just like they did with Common Core. Let's take those pilot states, put it in there, let everyone know how great it is. Of course, they manipulate everything. They don't really tell you how it's working. People think it's working fine, but you really don't know until later on. The same thing with the police, the policing guides here. The same thing's going to happen. It's going to sound great. It's going to sound fantastic. Later on, you're going to see a police force that looks totally different from what you're used to. We're already starting to see that with advanced weapons, the police dressed in military garb, the police using excessive force in certain instances. And the smaller towns, they're going to see a transformation. Because this is a fascistic country now, where the corporations, the bankers, rule with the government. There is no Bill of Rights. There is no Constitution. The federal government controls everything, all the way down to the town. The states have no say. The counties have no say. The towns have no say. So what do they have right now? The federal government controls our education process. The federal government controls our policing. The federal government controls us. This is what we're seeing at this point. They realize everything is in overdrive right now because this entire system is collapsing. They're trying to put all this into place. And they do believe once this is all over, once they start the war, and after the war, they're going to reset the system, but this time it's going to be a little different. It's going to be under their terms. No rights, no constitution. You'll do what they say. you'll be controlled by them. It will be a different world unless we stop it. Now, out in Japan, we understand the U.S. wants to move their base to a different location in Okinawa because they want to bring in more advanced weapons. They want to load up on troops. Right now, there's about 47,000 soldiers in Japan. They want to increase this, and there's been a lot of protests out there. The governor is saying, absolutely not. We do not want this base built. And right now, he's saying that he will revoke approval for works needed on the relocation of this U.S. military air base. I mean, he's saying this after Tokyo announced the base relocation process has resumed. And he's saying, no, 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 no. I am going to stop this right now. We don't want this thing built. And we're going to have to continually watch this because we understand that Japan, they want this new base. They are no longer a passive nation. They're building warships. They're preparing for war. That's what's happening here. All the countries with private Western central banks in them are preparing for war. And we can see over time, with the movement of military assets, soldiers, with changing their laws, they are definitely preparing. Ukraine, right now, they have ended their aircraft cooperation with Russia. They're no longer going to cooperate and build aircraft with Russia. Actually, if you notice, Ukraine is completely separating themselves from Russia. I mean, they're working on a new gas deal right now. We'll see if anything comes of that. We have winter coming. They don't have enough in their tanks. But what's very interesting about this whole situation in Ukraine is that we're on the third Minsk agreement, really, because they decided, okay, let's get together, let's have another ceasefire. And of course, Kiev is maybe sometimes attacking, but not as often as they used to. But they keep mentioning the same thing over and over. The Minsk II ceasefire is the only peace deal right now. It has to be observed. It's the only peace deal. It has to be observed. And what they're saying is there's nothing after this. So if this fails, there's nothing and it's all out war. And they're continually saying this nonstop. And there's only one reason why you would continually say this instead of following along with it is that you want it to fail and let everyone know this is all we have. And it looks like this is what they're doing. Ukraine is asking for Western weaponry. Just in case the Minsk deal fails. They want the weapons. They're not too sure if this is going to hold. Well, the only way it will fail is if Kiev opens fires and attacks. Because Donetsk, Lugansk, they're not going to do this. We see out in Iran, we see other countries are already getting ready to make investments in Iran. Accor Hotels, a French group, they're going to be building the first international hotel in Iran by the Tehran's airport. As soon as the sanctions are lifted, they're going in there. So countries are ready to do business with Iran. Germany and Italy, they're using this refugee crisis. They're using what's going on with Russia to say they may increase their submarine fleets. German and Italian navies are looking to increase their submarine fleets in light of evolving security challenges. The Baltic Sea is reemerging as an area of importance for the German Navy. Of course, with the Russian threat, they have to be ready. With the instability of the Mediterranean, with all the refugees, Italy is saying we have to increase our submarine fleets. And they're using this all as an excuse for war. Now, we know that Al-Qaeda, the Islamic State, those are all proxy armies. They're created by the CIA. They're fake, phony, and false. And most of the time, they're not even in the countries. They take their small little group, a camera crew, they film it, and they say, oh, look, they're inside of these countries. most of the time, it's the people fighting back because they don't want the puppet governments inside their countries, which are controlled by the U.S. government central bankers. And they call them the Islamic State, they call them Al-Qaeda. But we're hearing from Hamid Karzai, the ex-president now of Afghanistan, saying that Al-Qaeda was a myth in Afghanistan. It was also a myth in Iraq. They weren't in these countries at all. Of course they weren't. Because they used the word Al-Qaeda to use the drone attacks because they had legislation in the government to attack Al-Qaeda. So what they did was, these people who are fighting back, who don't want us in there, when I say us, the U.S. government central bankers and the puppet government, we're going to call them Al-Qaeda. This way we can use drones on them. That's it. They never really existed. This is a proxy army that they use to invade countries. And then they use Al-Qaeda or the Islamic State to call those people who are rising up. There's two different ways they use it. But it's very simple to understand here. We see this refugee crisis. It's getting worse. And when we look at it, we have to think to ourselves, why is this getting worse? Well, if the Syrian crisis was so bad, and we look back in time, and people are escaping Assad right now, like the corporate media and the U.S. government wants us to believe, why not in 2008, 2009, 2010, 11, 12, 2013? Why didn't we see huge immigration crisis back then if everyone wanted to leave Syria and get out? Because that's what they're telling us now. It's because of Assad, right? Well, how come we're only seeing it now? This war's been going on for a very long time. But when you look at this situation, what do you see? Turkey has been letting in refugees by the thousands into their country in the last few years. And they kept them in certain areas. Actually, they've reached about 2 million refugees. Now these refugees are forced out of Turkey, and they are being pushed through Turkey into Greece or through Macedonia, up through Hungary, Austria, and Germany. Now, why would they do this? Why all of a sudden would Turkey tell all of these refugees to leave, and why are they being pushed into Europe? Well, they need this to convince those European nations to say, we can't take this anymore. We need to do something. This immigration problem is out of hand. And they have many different agendas associated with this. One, create a safe zone. Inside Syria, break it off and say, okay, let's put them back in Syria, and we're going to say the whole eastern side of Syria is the safe zone. We're going to bring troops in there, and it will allow them to have troops on the ground ready to go after Assad. Two, it allows the European nations to say, okay, we can't take this anymore. We need to go in and get Assad. We will join the fight full throttle ahead. We're going to get him because this is getting out of hand. This whole thing looks like it was completely planned from the beginning. And it was done on purpose. Remember, their goal is always the same. Their goal is to get Assad. Tactics are going to change, but the goal is always the same. And we watch these tactics and we see all their tricks and what they're trying to do. And we can see right now they're dragging in Russia into this, continually coming out that Russia is building an air base. Russia is expanding the forces. Well, I hate to say, and they're even putting up satellite photos. They're even showing us that, look, here is the airport. You see, this could be housing. This could be a helicopter pad. And it's the same blurred out satellite images that we always see. Now, I see better images on Google Maps than what the U.S. government gives us. But we know from what we've been seeing is they're trying to bring Russia into this. They're trying to convince people that Russia is getting ready to do something. But they've been doing the same thing they've always done. They've been bringing in the same amount of military assets. They've been supporting Assad. Actually, Assad invited Russia into the country. They have a port in Tartus. Actually, Assad never invited the U.S. or the coalition forces into his country to fight the Islamic State. Actually, the U.S. and the coalition forces invaded Syria. Russia was invited. So who's the bad guy in this picture? Actually, it's the U.S. and the coalition forces. Just like Yemen. Who did Yemen attack? That's right, nobody. So why did Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, Egypt decide to go into Yemen? Because this is all about keeping control and taking over new governments to prop up the dollar. That's what this is all about. And Syria right now and Russia are saying, listen, the reason why we have this refugee crisis, it's not because of Assad, it's not because of Putin, it's because the U.S. is supporting terrorists, the proxy army, the Islamic State. The U.S. is causing this problem. And they already are telling everyone, we know what's going on. We understand that you're not hitting the Islamic State targets. We understand that you're hitting the Syrian army, the infrastructure of Syria. And they're putting it out there now. And it looks like time is of the essence. It looks like the U.S. government central bankers need to push this forward because they're running out of time. I mean, Syria can ask Russia right now, listen, start bringing in troops. And they want this to happen. They want to get Assad before this happens. But if it goes into a war, so be it. They don't care. They don't care if they send your brother, your sister, your cousin, your mother, your father into war. It's the risk they're willing to take. So we can see right now, at this point, they really don't care. We see that DHS right now announced the expansion of the agency's program to detect nuclear and radiological threats in major U.S. cities. Well, that's very interesting. Wasn't Israel testing a dirty bomb in the desert to see what effect it has? And now the U.S. Department of Homeland Security is expanding their detection of nuclear and radiological threats in major U.S. cities. Well, what cities already do they have this in? New York, New Jersey, California, and Washington, D.C. And they want to expand this to other cities, which they're doing presently. So what can we expect here? Well, we know they're setting up a false flag event. We know they're setting up an event to cover up this entire collapse. All the pieces are in place. They're preparing. They're getting ready. They're just waiting for the green light. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.